It's time to lock in. We're talking SEC, college football, and more. This is AP as we see it.
I'm all about that action. I'm all about that action. I'm all about that action. I said I'm all about that action.
I'm AP Stedham from LA, Lower Alabama. This is AP As We See It, a weekly syndicated 1-hour show discussing the Southeastern Conference, always keeping an eye on the national college football scene and other sports. Welcome to another edition of AP As We See It. We'd like to direct our audience to our Facebook, Instagram, X accounts at AP As We See It, and then at AP Stedham, my personal one as well. We have our YouTube channel broadcast. It's weekly. It's 1 hour. That is at AP As We See It. And we're also on Spotify. That's our audio edition. It's archived each and every week. And then the 20-plus local radio stations around the Southeast. You can check your local listings. It airs and is broadcast on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. We want to make mention of our special guest this week for segment 2 and segment 3. We have Matt Baker, senior writer from The Athletic. We're going to discuss SEC and college football, of course, and other subject matters that have cropped up and of interest to all our audience. And then our segment number 4, we'll have Nick Patti. He's a former linebacker at Florida State. He's a Fairhope High School graduate. He's in the Fairhope High School Hall of Fame. He's a lawyer involved with some NIL deals with college athletes, college football primarily. So we're looking forward to our discussion with Nick to explain the NIL as it stands currently. But anyway, we want to get into our show. And last week we mentioned one of the college football rules, some of the different changes. We forgot to make mention of the fair catch rule, and that is at the end of the quarter, the second quarter and the fourth quarter, when you're receiving between the 0 and 5 seconds, you can attempt a field goal. The defense must be 10 yards away from the offensive side, and you can attempt a field goal. And even if the field goal is attempted with no time, that's acceptable. You receive the kick with no time. You call the fair catch, and you're allowed to attempt a kick by snapping the ball and entertaining the option of attempting a field goal. So we want to make mention of that new rule. It's a fair punt or fair catch on a kickoff with the 0 to 5 seconds remaining in the second quarter and the fourth quarter. So that's something new. That's kind of a new rule. You can attempt also, I think, a drop kick as well. We want to move on to the Associated Press poll. The preseason poll came out. That's been an ongoing feature of college football since 1936. We've had the Associated Press poll. And we like to make mention of my poll, the Super 16 poll that I submit every week for the Football Writers Association of America and the National Football Foundation Super 16 poll. We'll go over this right now. The Associated Press, number 1, Ohio State. I had Notre Dame. Number 2, Oregon. I had Georgia. Number 3, Georgia. I had Ohio State. Number 4, Notre Dame. I had Texas. Number 5, Texas. I had Indiana. Number 6, Indiana. I had Miami. Number 7 is Miami. I had Oregon. Number 8 is Texas A&M. I had Texas A&M as well. Number 9, I was in agreement. I had Ole Miss at number 9. Number 10, Oklahoma. I had LSU. Number 11 was LSU. I had Alabama. Number 12 was Texas Tech. I had USC. Number 13 is Alabama. I had Texas Tech. Number 14 and myself both had BYU. Number 15 is USC. I had Penn State. Number 16, both had Michigan. And that's where my voting ends at the 16. But 17 with the Associated Press was Washington. Number 18, Penn State. Number 19, SMU. Number 20 was Tennessee. Number 21 is Utah. 22, Iowa. 23, Houston. 24, Louisville. And 25, Missouri. So if you look at the listing for the AP, they had 9 teams from the SEC in their top 25. In the top Super 16 poll, I had 6 SEC teams. The teams receiving votes in the Super 16 poll by the Football Writers Association of America and National Football Foundation. Tennessee had 33 votes, Vandy 7, Auburn 7, Florida 5, South Carolina 2. So that's 5 teams receiving votes in the FWAA NFF Super 16 poll. The 4 SEC teams receiving votes in the Associated Press preseason poll: Florida had 51, South Carolina 10, Vandy 8, and Auburn 3. So that's 9 in the original 25, and 4, that's 13 teams. There's only 3 teams left out of that poll, believe it or not. So that's quite amazing for the SEC to start the season in good stead, and they're viewed by the Associated Press with that many teams in the top 25 and 4 other teams receiving votes. So that's exceptional. We want to look at something that has been going on. There's been a cease and desist order by Jaden Daniels' representation to LSU. He said he was promised that his number would be retired. We see that a defensive back who previously wore number 3 is now wearing that number 5 of Jaden Daniels. The coach Lane Kiffin said if a player was promised that number by the previous coaching staff, he wants to honor it. So that's the situation right now. We know that the LSU Athletic Hall of Fame has some requirements. If you're going to have a number that's retired, it has to be 100% unanimous vote by the LSU Athletic Hall of Fame. There's a 5-year waiting period, which is Jaden Daniels has not completed that as of yet. There, you have to have an elite accomplishment, which he does with the Heisman Trophy. And so there's other players at LSU that have a retired number, but the numbers can still be put into circulation. That's at the discretion of the head coach. So Lane Kiffin exercised his discretion by allowing this defensive back, this player, to wear the number 5. So we have other players that have retired numbers at LSU. And I was there at one of the ceremonies, as a matter of fact. Number 4, Charles Alexander, Charles the Great, the running back from LSU. Number 7, Burt Jones. Number 30, he's a quarterback, of course. The great Burt Jones, the great Tommy Casanova. Number 37 was a defensive back. And the great all-around player, number 21, Jerry Stovall. They have the retired football numbers. Now, number 20 is in a separate category. When they came out with this rule in 2007, the LSU, Billy Cannon, his number is retired and cannot be issued at all, even at the discretion of the head coach. So Billy Cannon is the only one immortalized by having his number totally retired. Now, Joe Burrow, it's been implied that he was told that his number would be retired and not issued. So far has not. But Jaden Daniels, he's claiming the same thing, that his number was promised to be retired and not reissued. But that is the point of contention. I guess you're going to have these lawyers figure out the decision moving forward. But at this time, number 5 is going to be worn by an LSU player in the current 2026 season. So I think that if I was Jaden Daniels, I think he had all this goodwill by winning the Heisman, playing spectacular that season. It was almost unstoppable offense. They didn't have the defense to match, of course. That's one of the reasons why Brian Kelly in the end was not retained. But I think if I was Jaden Daniels and his family and friends and his representation, I would not have pursued this cease and desist order, because here's Joe Burrow, who had a fabulous season, 60 touchdowns. I mean, that once again, 60 touchdowns in a 15-game season, undefeated. That's 4 touchdowns per game. Jaden Daniels had over nearly 4,000 yards passing, over 1,000 yards rushing, 40 touchdown passes. Spectacular season as well, but he's not matching Joe Burrow with the 60 touchdowns. And so I think I would just let that be. And as I said, the only number that is immortalized that cannot be reissued is Billy Cannon. So even if your number was retired, at the head coach's discretion, it can be reissued. And so that's been the case right now with Lane Kiffin. He's honored that and gave it to that player, that number 5. So I just think he received bad counsel, whether it was family members, representation, or otherwise. I would have just let it be. He's beloved by the LSU fans for winning the Heisman Trophy, and just let that legend, grow and prosper. But they chose otherwise, and so now you have this controversy at LSU. But it seems like they've addressed it in the past with this 2007 ruling. Billy Cannon is the only one, and he still has to go through this 5-year process before it can be retired. And there has to be 100% unanimous vote by the LSU Athletic Hall of Fame. So I don't know what prompted him to think that he can issue a cease and desist order, but that's the state of affairs at LSU, and we'll see what happens down the road. But anyhow, we're going to have two great guests coming up. As I said, segment 2 and 3, Matt Baker, the senior writer for The Athletic, and then Nick Patti is the former walk-on at Florida State. He was an excellent ball player, linebacker, special teams. They called him the Swiss knife. He's in the Fairhope Sports Hall of Fame as well. And he's a lawyer involved with the NIL deals, and he's also certified by the NFL to represent players at that level. So we're looking forward to having him as a first-time guest. And Matt Baker has been a friend of the show for a long time. But anyway, those are the polls. The Associated Press poll came out, preseason poll. I always like to review that with our audience, and I always like to bring up mine and see how it compares and contrasts. There's a few similarities, as we mentioned, but anyhow, the Associated Press poll, and I always look forward to being a member, selection committee member for the Football Writers Association of America, National Football Foundation Super 16 polls. So we're going to be right back after these messages with Matt Baker. He is the senior writer for The Athletic. We're going to discuss the number of controversy, the some things happening with the SEC, the 9-game schedule, the playoffs, and a number of other topics. So we're going to be right back after these messages with AP as we see it. And we're back with AP as we see it, and we have a very special guest, a friend of the show, Matt Baker, the senior writer for The Athletic. Hey, welcome back to AP as we see it, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me on, AP. Good to talk to you as always.
Oh, my pleasure, of course. Matt, this is our time of year, July. It doesn't even wait till August for us. We're all over this college football business. But I guess the first question I'll ask you, because I'm always intrigued about the playoff, the 20-team playoff. Matt, do you have some opinions about that, maybe compromise?
About 20 as the compromise? Here's my thought is there's been details that have changed with 12 every single year to the point where I have to think about, wait a second, we still have 12, right? What's different this year than last year? And the fact that either I'm really incompetent and bad at my job, which is totally possible as long as my bosses are not listening to this. It's either that or this is really confusing. And if I'm confused, the general fan, Joe and Jane fan, are confused as well.
Yes.
So my thought is, let's let this thing kind of bake for a minute, right? Like, I don't know whether this is good or bad. We haven't had enough data yet. So let's see how this goes. Let's give it another couple of years. And then at the end of it, say, okay, this is working. This is not working. We need automatic qualifiers. We don't. What might a 20-team playoff have looked like, or 16 or 24, or whatever it is? Yes. Let's figure out what's the problem we're trying to solve before we go fiddling with it anyway. Like the example that I go back to is NASCAR. You know, I grew up a NASCAR fan in Indiana, watched plenty of it. They've changed the playoff and the way that they crown a champion a lot over the last 20 years or so, to the point where I'm not sure I could tell you what it is right now. And that's a major problem for the casual fan that's not living and dying by every race, or in our case, every single game. We want to, if for the sport to succeed at the highest level, it's going to need to reel in casual fans, and changing everything all the time to the point where I don't know what's going on. Not the way to do that, AP.
Right. Matt, are you satisfied with the 12? I mean, what makes you happy about 12-team playoffs?
So I am satisfied because it should be hard to get into the playoff, right?
It should.
Like the beauty of college football compared to the other sports is it is the best regular season in sports. That's a talking point, and it has been for years, but I also think it's true. I fell in love with the game because of anything can happen on Saturday that will mess up the entire rest of the country. So the more you get away from that, the more you get away from what I fell in love with, what you fell in love with, what you listening, whoever and wherever you are, what you fell in love with, if you risk alienating that hardcore fan, that's a problem. And to me, the 12-team playoff has been a fine way to split the difference. Where, okay, could Notre Dame have won the title if they had gotten in last year? Yeah. But, okay, shouldn't have lost twice, right? Like we can quibble whether they should have had the final seed or not, but the fact is they lost twice, they hurt themselves, and the games mattered, right? Like, so if we retroactively put a 16, 20, 24 team playoff, then the Miami Notre Dame game that I was at, that ended up being the game that mattered. That is the biggest game of the season when we look at the domino effect afterwards.
Yes.
In a 2014 playoff where Notre Dame and Miami are both in, the game doesn't matter.
No.
It doesn't have the same stakes. So I have been happy with the way it's worked out so far. I think it's a feature, not a bug, that a really good team like Notre Dame could be left out. Can we keep tweaking it and quibbling with it? Yeah, of course. It's fine. It's not perfect. We can refine it. But I think as a whole, it's been fine and maybe better than I expected. And I think we should kind of let this keep going for a little bit before we start really trying to fix it.
Right. And then Notre Dame, the two teams they played that were top echelon, they lost, as you said. And I still think the regular season matters, Matt, because coaches, they do not like to lose games in football. Basketball, heck, you have 10 losses, no problem. We're in the tournament. We get to the Final Four. Everybody forgets the 10 losses. But college football coaches, they remember every loss. They take it to heart. So I still think it matters for the head coaches of a program that they can brag about beating their rival or, the in-state school or something, or their team that they've been playing for 50 years, let's say. Yeah. Matt, we're going to move on. One other thing. What about retiring numbers, Matt? What do you have? I have an opinion about that. What do you have about retiring numbers?
I think it depends on if we're retiring the number or are we retiring the jersey, which is a stupid difference or distinction that I had not thought about until the last couple of years. Obviously, the Jaden Daniels thing at LSU has kind of pushed that into the forefront. Here's the fact: is there's 105 players on a roster, and there's 100 numbers, 0 to 99. So already you're doubling up. And if we start taking too many numbers out of circulation, it gets really, really wonky. So my thought would be, I kind of like an idea of it has to be an all-time great Mount Rushmore type player at a school for them to truly retire the number forever. Right. Billy Cannon at LSU, right? Okay. Most beloved, best player in school history. Okay. I don't think anybody's going to argue that maybe nobody should wear 20 again. But if you want to honor the jersey, retire the jersey for somebody who's in that great, but maybe not the most beloved one or two guys ever. I think maybe that's the way to do it, because you start running into practical effects here. And I think the big thing is communication and like a clear understanding of this is our rules. This is the way it works. Like LSU having a 5-year kind of grace period, that's totally logical. It makes total sense. But maybe the spat going on there would have been prevented if Jaden and Jaden's team and Burrow and whoever else, just everyone kind of understood this is the way we do things, good, bad, or ugly. These are our rules and we're sticking to them. And I don't know that was accurately communicated to everybody, as I guess what I would say.
Matt, the next thing I want to ask you about is, what's something a unique scenario that might crop up in the SEC? Do you have a projection, maybe an anticipation of something that might crop up with the SEC? And I guess maybe we can incorporate the 9-game schedule. Maybe something's going to happen strange with this 9-game schedule.
Yeah. I wonder what it's going to mean for the tiebreakers is, I guess, a big part of it. You will look at, this isn't apples to apples, but you look at what happened last year in the ACC, right? Where Virginia was in, and then it's Duke, is it Miami, is it SMU, right? Like this whole jumble behind it, where they went to like the 57th tiebreaker, and it was like, what color is your mascot? Okay, I'm being facetious, but, right? It got to the point where, what are we doing here? Like, there's got to be a better way. And the ACC, to their credit, addressed it and fixed it. But my point here is that I could see something weird like that trying to happen in the SEC, where because there's more, 9 games is an odd number and weird things can happen. I also, this isn't a totally weird thing, but I think we're going to have to, as this continues to go forward, we as consumers of the sport are going to have to wrap our heads around how different schedules are going to be, where my team catches all the breaks and we get teams, the 9 through 16 on our schedule this year. That's just the way it goes. And your team is unlucky and you get teams 1 through 8, right? Like there's going to be weird stuff like that where that happens. Yes, I understand to some degree that's always been the case. When the East was weaker than the West and when in the division format most years for a while. So like some of that's cyclical, some of it's luck, but we just have to wrap our heads around those possibilities where maybe Florida ends up with a better record than LSU or Texas A&M or somebody. If we watch the games, it could play out where we would all, those of us with eyes were watching the games. No, I don't think Florida is as good as LSU or A&M, just in this example. But Florida has a better record because they drew an easier schedule. So like that's something I think we're going to have to keep conditioning ourselves for.
Yeah, I think so. Nothing you could do about it when you have so many teams in your conference, 16 in the SEC, particularly some of the other conferences even more, right? So I think that's a great point you made. We got a couple of minutes left. Matt Baker, the senior writer of The Athletic, a couple of minutes in this segment. Now, who is a quarterback that might surprise in the SEC? A couple of minutes.
A quarterback that might surprise. I mean, obviously, whoever wins the job at Bama. Okay, Byron Brown at Auburn. I like him a lot. I don't know if surprised because he's certainly on my radar. I'm in the Tampa area. I saw him for several years at USF, where he went from kind of, I don't want to call him an afterthought. I don't think that's fair, but he went from a guy on the roster to one of the better players USF has had probably ever. I don't think that's hyperbole. Then him following Alex Golesh from USF to Auburn. He's got the potential to be really good at Auburn. I know some Tigers fans have been wondering about his throwing motion or whatever.
Yes.
Look, here's the thing. He's a player, right? Like he can run. He's fast enough. He's strong. He's a capable runner on that. He's got a good arm. I saw him do plenty of things with my own eyes, right? So, and the fact that he knows Alex Golesh, they know each other, they know that system and that familiarity. That to me is a good sign for Auburn this year because it microwaves the rebuild process, right? Where you have that familiarity and all that stuff in there. So Byram is the one that I'm really curious to see how he does because I think if he stays healthy and all that stuff, he's got a chance to have a really, really good year.
Yeah, I can't escape that 42 touchdowns. 28 passing and 14 running. Matt, did you happen to cover that game against South Florida in Florida?
I was not at that one. The one that comes to mind, I saw him beat Boise in week 1 last year on a Thursday night. The USF was okay the first half, and then just the second half just blew them out. And Byron was very, very good in that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Hey, we're with Matt Baker, the senior writer of The Athletic. We're going to come right back after these messages with more of AP as we see it. And we're back with AP as we see it, and our very special guest friend of the show many years, Matt Baker, senior writer, The Athletic. Matt, this federal legislation, I guess the time is coming gone for the moment. So how do you see this moving forward with this legislation? It wasn't able to pass.
It wasn't able to pass yet is the optimistic spin, right? Where Congress and the Senate in particular, they had a lot of things going on. They couldn't ram it through before they went on recess for August. I would also like to go on a month-long recess, but nobody cares what I think. So when they come back in September, apparently they have some sort of guarantee where they're going to bring it to the vote. But I would be concerned about it passing because, look, it's just a math thing. There's not a lot of days where I think it's like basically 18 days, 17 days, something like that, of them Senate actually working in there. And then they leave because they have to go campaign for re-election in the midterms. So you don't have a lot of time. And then you go to the House, which is a completely different thing with completely different sets of politics and individuals and what have you. I think the flaw here is that the Senate bill tried to do too much. And once you start bringing in a bunch of different ideas and instead of, we need antitrust exemption, the NCAA, so we can have clear rules and it's the same in Texas and Mississippi and Washington and Hawaii. Yes. It's 171 pages is the last version I saw, plus minutes that got tacked on. So it became really, really complicated. The more stuff you put into it, the more stuff that can break it. and that caused this pause. And I'm skeptical and pessimistic that anything is going to happen. Some of that is, I think I'm fairly skeptical and pessimistic about Congress as a whole and politics as a whole. But I just don't know that it's going to happen. And then the real question is, okay, so if it goes through December and nothing happens, then what?
Yeah, I don't know either. I just think the Wild West, I don't know how long the Wild West was exactly, Matt, in history, but I don't know. This Wild West might overtake it. I'm not sure.
Feels like it, right?
It does. Yeah, for certain. Matt, the proverbial favorites, I guess, Georgia and Texas, when you have a $47 million roster in Austin and Georgia, they win. And I use the term over and over, and people are probably getting tired of it in spite of themselves. But do you have a strong feeling about any other team overtaking those two, maybe?
In the SEC,
Yeah.
I don't. I would put them 1-2, 2-1. I
Yes.
lean Texas probably
Yeah.
because if not now, then when? Right?
That's right.
Or,
Yeah.
last year, Arch did not start off well, but he got better as the season wore on. So now, second year as a starter, he should be better. You look at the supporting cast with Cam Coleman and Hollywood Smothers, a running back I liked a lot at NC State, and on and on. If not now, then when for Texas? Georgia, I'm a little iffier on, just because they lose, or excuse me, they're young, and I'm just not quite there. But I still think they're probably going to be number 2. I wonder about LSU.
Yes.
If I had to do it today, I think I would have them in the playoff, but I don't feel super strong about it. It's year one for Lane. He's shown clearly that he can build a program quickly through the portal, but can he do that at the high enough level at LSU with a pretty brutal schedule? I don't know yet. A&M, I'm a little skeptical on. I think they've regressed a little bit since a bunch of changes on the offensive and defensive line. And Florida's one that I know a lot of people have kind of pegged as if we want to call them a sleeper or not.
Yes.
I feel really good about the receivers. Jaden Baugh, running back, is excellent. The defense, I think, should be good enough. I was at their spring game. The quarterbacks didn't wow me. And maybe it's a spring game, you take it for what it's worth, but I'm just not sold 100% yet. I think Florida will be better. I think this will be a year where Gators fans look at it and say, okay, we are moving in the right direction, right? But in terms of like competing for the conference or dark horse playoff, I'm not at that level yet, no.
Yeah, Florida, I mean, they're very excited about their coach, and they should be. Summerall, he's an outstanding head coach in college football. He's succeeded everywhere. So the team that I'm looking at sometime, I want to see Austin Simmons in Missouri. I want to see what he does with Eli Drinkwitz, the head coach.
I think that's certainly an interesting one. You know, he kind of got Wally pipped at Ole Miss when Trinidad Chambliss blew up. But Austin's a guy that, in my neck of the woods in Florida, he's been a name for a while. He's a name in high school. I think he was committed to Florida at one point. Clearly talented, right? I don't think that's the question, but how quickly can it gel at Missouri? And I also wonder just about Missouri's offense in general. Drinkwitz is a good offensive coach.
Yes.
Clearly, but Hardy, the all-America caliber running back, was shot this offseason. And he is I believe he's practicing and he's getting better and all that stuff. But certainly I hope has a great recovery that has nothing, regardless of ball, right? But if he is healthy, and if he's healthy quickly enough, like, he's one of the most dynamic backs in the country, and that'll certainly be good for Austin and the Tigers' offense as a whole.
Yeah, and another team, Alabama, has the 2 quarterbacks. I think they're capable, talented players, but this offensive line, I mean, that is a big – I mean, if you can make a question mark the biggest thing on the paper, that's what I would do. Offensive line question mark next to Alabama. And you brought in a new offensive line coach. So we're going to find out if it was the players, was it a coaching? But if this offensive line doesn't perform very well with a new quarterback, I don't know if Alabama gets back to the playoff. But I think the defense is going to be good, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Alabama is just a really, really interesting program right now, because everyone realistic understands that Nick Saban's gone. You're not going to do a zillion national titles. That doesn't happen. You can't. period.
Right.
So what's realistic? What's fair for the next guy? In this case, Kalen
Yes.
DeVore. I think he's done okay, but
Yeah.
is okay and kind of meeting reasonable expectations. Is that good enough? I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm curious about, they've got Florida State. I think it's in week 3.
Right.
Obviously, Florida State beat them in Tallahassee last year. Florida State, I don't think is going to be great, but I think if
No.
Alabama doesn't play well, Florida State should be good enough to give them a scare in Tuscaloosa or upset them. I don't think that's crazy talk. So that's an early matchup that I kind of have on my calendar here. Like, okay, let's see what they can do here. Because Alabama, to your point, like the offensive line wasn't good enough, and they did not run the way that we would expect Alabama to run, and that's a problem as we're looking at Kalen DeVore and his future. I'm not saying hot seat. I'm not saying anything like that.
No.
But just as we assess it, the offensive line and run game have to be better, no question.
Yeah, I tell people 3 losses, that's the first time a team with that many defeats made the playoffs, and Alabama was 1 of 12. How do you fire a coach that makes the playoff 1 of 12 and 130 plus? I mean, and then you win a game on the road against a team in your conference that had beaten you during the season. So that's progress. But at the end of the season, they did get blown out a couple of times. So that's an issue, I would say. Hey, Matt, anything else about the SEC? Maybe take a minute with that. And I have a special Indiana question for you.
I mentioned Lane Kiffin earlier, but it's just fascinating, right? The Lane Kiffin LSU Ole Miss dynamic. I have no idea how that's going to shake out in Oxford in week 3. I'm excited to see how that one goes, and just Lane in general. I'm working on something at the Athletic on how good is Lane Kiffin really, because you look at the hardware, it's 2 Conference USA trophies when he was at Florida Atlantic as a head coach.
Yes,
but you look at him being one of the most successful coaches in Ole Miss history, one of the most successful coaches, or the most successful coach in FAU history, but disappointment at USC and Tennessee. So he's really hard to kind of fit in a box. There's 2 versions of Lane. There are probably more than that. So that's a story I'm working on at the Athletic, and excited to finish up here heading into week 1 and hopefully come up with some sort of an answer on where he is compared to some of his peers.
Oh, yeah. I think of it when he beat Georgia. That's one of his bigger victories in his career, I would say. But like you said, I think the chapters are still being written about Lane Kiffin. Matt, you're an Indiana native. You graduated from Indiana IU. That's the best story I ever saw, Matt. And I've been watching a long time. I recall the 67 team playing in the 68 Rose Bowl versus O.J. Simpson, Harry Gonzo, and Eisenberg and John Font. So that's the best story I've ever seen.
Yeah, so I grew up in Indiana. I went to Northwestern, so I'm a Big Ten guy. But I grew up like 45 minutes east of Bloomington. And here's how irrelevant IU football was. I love college football. I've made this my career. I loved it as a kid. Growing up that close to Bloomington, the Baker family never said, you know what? We're not doing anything Saturday. Why don't we go over to Bloomington and watch IU play Michigan or Iowa or whoever it is? It never happened, ever. Because why would you go to an IU football game? You wouldn't. So for them to do what they did that quickly under Signetti, and playoff and then obviously the national title, it still does not compute. I was in Bloomington for the national championship game, hanging around. I watched the game at the watch party at Assembly Hall, and was hanging out on the frigid bar area before and after, and like it still is surreal for me to think about how that happened, but it happened. I saw the people climbing buildings and lighting a couch on fire and all that stuff because IU won a national championship in football. I agree. Explaining it to my casual IU friends who aren't big college football fans, what is this? It is the most unlikely story in the history of American sports. I don't think that's hyperbole.
Oh yeah, I think. Hey, Matt, clarify. You went to Northwestern.
Correct.
Not IU.
Correct. I did not want to go to IU. I wanted to get the heck away from I had seen a lot of cornfields and a lot of soybeans in Indiana for the first 18 years of my life. I wanted to go somewhere else.
Yes. Oh, sure. Hey, Matt, how can folks find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky at Matt Baker CFB, and all my stuff's on the Athletic under the New York Times umbrella. Hey,
it's always fun to speak with Matt Baker, the senior writer of The Athletic. We really appreciate you being on AP as we see it, Matt, and look forward to future guest appearances and have fun this college football season. I know you will. Thank you, Matt Baker, senior writer of The Athletic. And We'll be
Thanks,
back
AP.
right after. You're welcome. We'll be right back after these messages with AP as we see it. Thank you, Matt. As we see it, and a very special guest, a first time, but he's been a friend for a while. We got to know each other in L.A., Lower Alabama. Nick Patti, a former Florida State University Swiss knife, played all those linebacker positions, special teams extraordinaire, Fairhope High School graduate, Fairhope High School Hall of Fame, number 40. Nick Patti. Hey, welcome to AP as we see it, Nick.
AP, thanks for having me in, man. Good seeing you.
And I should say an attorney, and he's involved in this NIL business, and he has the agency, Athlete Advocate Agency. Nick, my first question, how do you acquire that talent? Just a thumbnail sketch, if you would, for our audience so they can understand.
Sure. So, I mean, obviously I know what it looks like, right? And so my first step in the process is looking at tape, right? Watching games, identifying players that probably aren't the biggest names out there because I'm a small agency at this point still, so I'm not able to grab some of those bigger guys, but using just what I know from my background in playing to identify talent initially. Then you got to get in touch with them. That's probably the most difficult thing to do, and it's probably my least favorite part of it because it usually results in a DM on Instagram or Twitter. But man, every single guy that I've actually been able to connect with and talk to, I've landed as a client. I think that is because of probably two things. One, I'm a former player. I can talk the talk with these guys, right? I know the language.
Yes.
I know defensive formations. I know play calls. I know situational football. I mean, I give some of my guys tips and tricks on games heading into games because I'm doing some of my own breakdowns and stuff during the week. And so I can talk the talk with them on the football side of things.
Yes.
And then as their agent, the most important thing that I can do for them is represent them in negotiations with universities and other third parties that want to do deals with them. And my day job is as a lawyer. I negotiate multi-million-dollar deals. I litigate multi-million-dollar deals every single day I go to work. And so that's the easy part for me. But it's where I've really found that I've separated myself in the way I negotiate their deals with their universities, because I can talk about them as a football player to their coaches and those staffs, but then I can turn right around and get with their general counsel at the university and redline their contract to death to the point where it turns out to be very favorable for our clients.
That's your superpower, making that connection.
Right.
That's awesome, Nick.
That's right.
Really appreciate that explanation. Nick, the world of NIL, it's still the Wild West, so anything's possible. Is that right? I mean, any connection to a company, any types of ways you want to market, promote your clients, it's really still wide open.
There still is very few limitations in the NIL space. Part of me says that you should open this thing up. Let's make it free market capitalism and let the market dictate terms, prices, agreements, etc. What I have found is that at the end of the day, you're still dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids at the college level. And those are kids. I did not misspeak when I said those are 18 to 22-year-old kids.
Yes.
Those kids need protection.
Yes.
Unfortunately, there are a lot of bad actors in this space. And what is probably most surprising to people is that some of those bad actors aren't the people that are even on the other side of the deals with you. Sometimes they're the people that are supposed to be in your corner, right?
Right.
Family,
Yeah.
friends, coaches, brothers, cousins, sisters, best friend, that's supposed to be helping out with these negotiations. Those can be some of the people that actually cause more problems for you in this process. And so one thing I realized as a lawyer was I was getting all these phone calls from people. Hey, I got this horrible deal I need help with. Hey, I signed this agency contract and they changed the terms on me after I signed it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
One thing I realized is that this is not no representation is made to the quality of legal services provided. Disclaimer, I don't care how good of a lawyer I am, certain contracts I can't get you out of because they're that good and they're that lopsided. And so what I realized is that for me, if I wanted to truly make a difference in this space, I needed to get involved in it on the front end, right? Be the agent that's negotiating these deals, that's fielding these opportunities for our players, that's, marking them up and, going through and a back and forth with the schools or the third party. That way we get better terms up front. So God forbid you got to fight about it at the end. You're at least on a level playing field.
Nick, what might be some surprises that have happened in this NIL landscape with you?
I mean, some of them I can't speak about
Yes.
just because of the nature of my job. I mean, again, I started off more so as a lawyer in this space. And so because of that, certain things that I've learned and come across are confidential and protected. But what has surprised me the most has probably been universities that at the beginning of this process, at the beginning of this chapter in college football, tried to take advantage of players. And what do I mean by that? You get a draft contract from a university and it is so lopsided. You start to review it. Have you seen the meme before where you're on the board and you got all the lines, here, there, and everywhere?
Yes.
You kind of need that layout in a review session of these contracts to make sure you can track the section, 7.2 that refers to section 4.1 that relies on 9. I mean, it's just crazy. And so, again, if you don't have somebody that understands that can truly analyze that document and scrutinize it, you set yourself up for failure. And one school in particular that I've come across, they tried to they made an offer to a player. Hey, we're going to pay you, let's just call it $150,000 a year. And for the player, it was a good deal. They were like a second or third string player at the time.
Yes.
It was a great deal for a Division I school and a Division I to get. Well, then you start digging into the terms of the agreement and you start understanding the definitions of words, like what does compensation mean in the agreement? The definition of compensation in the agreement, it effectively, baked in what is commonly referred to as cost of attendance and,
oh my goodness. Yeah.
So, there's a $100,000 scholarship that you're getting as a student athlete at a university. They were using that to offset what was owed to a player. I brought that up in a conversation and was told, we just have that in there. We would never enforce the language of that contract as it's written. I said, then why would you have that language in the contract? And admittedly, AP, if I had $1 for every time somebody told me it's in there, but we would never enforce it like that, I'd be on a beach somewhere retired because I hear it every single day, man.
Right.
And so we were actually able to renegotiate that term to clarify that issue. Nobody else pointed that out. No other agent, no other lawyer that reviewed that contract. Every other player on that team had that definition in their contract. AP, I'll leave it up to you to guess to whether or not they actually enforced it as written later on down the season.
Hey, Nick, salute to you, but that's highly disappointing, that story, Nick. That is very disappointing because they're always, villainize the player. And we know that the universities and colleges and schools, they can be quite punitive.
Absolutely. And the point that I made to them was, we're still at the early stages of this. The last thing that you want to do in anything, AP, is get a bad reputation, right? As a lawyer, the most important thing that you have in the industry is as a lawyer. I would argue that in this space, the most important thing that you have is your reputation. Do you want to be the university that has a reputation of taking advantage of players? I made that point to them. They said they heard it loud and clear. From what I've heard, it hadn't changed much at that school.
Yeah, I would think you wouldn't have to apply very much pressure on that score, Nick. That will get around like wildfire.
Yeah, and I mean, imagine the implications of that from a recruiting standpoint. Sure, you may save a couple $100,000, but how much are you going to lose in an overall revenue standpoint if you have a team that doesn't have a winning record?
Yeah, that head coach should be mad at his own school.
It made me wonder whether or not the head coach was aware of that, because I've actually had a chance to meet that head coach, believe it or not. And to me, the way he presents, that is not something that I would think he would expect or even want in a contract for one of his players. And so I do think that is a really good point you bring up, AP. I wonder at a large scale how involved some of these staffs are. I mean, look, they've got their hands full. Recruiting.
Oh, yes, they do. Yeah.
Roster retention. I mean, you name it. The last thing a lot of them want to do is get involved in contract drafting negotiations. But I do think that they should have an understanding of what their contracts say so that they understand that there's fallouts, consequences, and ramifications for it if things go sideways.
Yeah, their general manager, he has to be right there and close confidant, and he has to make that head coach aware. If he didn't or she didn't, I don't know. Do they have any female general managers? Have you come across any, Nick?
I have not personally. I actually do think that there is maybe one or two across the country, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's a role that you start to see more females kind of. I mean, it really is like a chief executive role for a Fortune 500 company when you think about the volume of what they're managing on a day-to-day basis. So I think that there's great women CEOs out there. I think there'd be great women GMs out there too.
Nick Patti, he's an attorney for Athlete Advocate Agency, and he's involved in these NIL deals and representation of players. Nick, anything that you'd like to say within the last about a minute and a half, anything you'd like to say to promote for your agency or just in general, NILs, some cautionary tales? I know that doesn't give much time, but anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I can hit a point real quick. One of the key things for my agency is that I'm not looking at my players to, make a big living off of. I charge 3%. That is the cap for an NFLPA contract negotiator.
Yes.
My basis and position in that is that when I represent a player, I want to represent them from the time they start in college until the time they finish playing in the NFL. I don't want to have a very uncomfortable conversation with that player after they've graduated college when I'm trying to sign them as an NFL player.
Yes.
Which I have to say, hey, I was charging you 10, 15. Sometimes we're charging up to 20%.
20%, right.
But now that you've made it to the big leagues, I'll only take 3. And so, that's part of me being an athlete advocate, right? I'm a former player. This agency was absolutely built on former players and making sure that they're adequately represented. There is one point that I would want to mention too, while I can, if I have the floor for another minute or so. How I met you, AP, was through a great mentor and friend of mine, Vince McConnell.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we actually lost him earlier this
Sure did.
year. But I think that, one of the key themes from his service was that, his impact still lives on through people like you and me that he's touched along his path and journey on this earth. And so I'm always appreciative of Coach Vince, and even more so for introducing me to you.
Yeah. Hey, Nick. Yeah. Thank you very much. And we really appreciate it. And that's the end of our show, end of our segment. And we'll try to have Nick back on again. And we thank you very much for being a guest. And we'll be back next week with another episode of AP as we see it.